Have you ever been in a situation where someone completely misjudged you? Where they looked at you and decided your worth before you even had a chance to speak? Imagine standing in a packed courtroom, all eyes on you, while a judge, someone who has seen thousands of cases, dismisses you with nothing but contempt in his eyes. Now imagine the satisfaction of proving him wrong in the most dramatic way possible. This is that story. In a bustling courtroom in downtown Boston, a scene was unfolding that no one would ever forget. The room hummed with the usual activity: lawyers shuffling papers, spectators whispering, court officials moving through their routines. Some were seeking justice, while others were simply getting through another monotonous day in the judicial system. At the front of the room, Judge William Hargrove sat elevated on his bench, his fingers drumming impatiently against the polished wood. In his early 60s, with salt and pepper hair and deep-set eyes, he had grown cold from decades of looking down on those he deemed beneath him. Thousands of cases had blurred together, just names to process before lunch. Today, however, he was about to meet someone who would shatter his world. His gaze fell on the defendant seated at the front. Alexandra Chun sat with perfect posture, unfazed by the weight of the court's attention. She appeared unremarkable, dressed in a charcoal gray suit, dark hair falling in soft waves past her shoulders. But there was something about her, a quiet confidence that felt out of place for someone facing criminal charges. It didn't take long for Hargrove to make his judgment. Another waste of the court's time. With a condescending smirk, he glanced at her file, then back up at Alexandra. "I see we have another entitled citizen who thinks the law is merely a suggestion," he announced, loud enough for the entire courtroom to hear. The gallery shifted uncomfortably. Several exchanged glances, sensing something wasn't right. But Alexandra didn't react. She remained still, a slight curve to her lips that wasn't quite a smile. The prosecutor, Mark Daniels, an ambitious young lawyer, cleared his throat, sensing the tension. "Your Honor, regarding the defendant," he began, but Hargrove silenced him with a dismissive wave. "Let's skip the formalities," the judge interrupted. "Ms. Chun, why don't you tell us why you believe you're above the law?" Alexandra's voice was measured and clear. "With all due respect, Your Honor, I prefer to discuss facts rather than assumptions." Her words sent a ripple through the courtroom. This woman was different. Hargrove's smirk faltered for just a second. He leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. "Facts?" he echoed mockingly. "By all means, Ms. Chun, enlighten us." Alexandra moved her hand toward her jacket pocket. The bailiff tensed. Judge Hargrove was about to make another remark when she withdrew something small, black, and leather. The entire courtroom held its breath. She opened the case deliberately, revealing a gleaming golden badge. Silence fell. Judge Hargrove's face drained of color. The prosecutor's pen slipped from his fingers, clattering onto the table. Alexandra placed the badge on the table with the casual confidence of someone holding a winning hand. "My name is Special Agent Alexandra Chen, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Counterintelligence Division." No one spoke. The judge's arrogance vanished, replaced by visible shock. The prosecutor frantically shuffled through his papers, realizing he had missed something critical. Alexandra let the silence stretch. "Before we proceed, I believe it's important to acknowledge that my arrest was not only unwarranted, but constitutes a direct violation of federal law and obstruction of justice." The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted. Judge Hargrove, full of mockery moments ago, now looked trapped in his own courtroom. But Alexandra wasn't finished. She reached into her bag again, this time removing a sealed manila envelope with clear government markings. As she slid it across the table, a deafening crash shook the room. The large glass windows at the back shattered as a tactical team in full FBI gear stormed in. Several people screamed. The bailiff reached for his weapon but froze when he saw the agents' uniforms. Within seconds, 6 heavily armed FBI agents had secured the room. "What is the meaning of this?" Judge Hargrove demanded, his voice cracking. Alexandra brushed a piece of glass from her sleeve. "The meaning, Your Honor, is that this case goes far beyond a simple mistaken arrest." She nodded to the lead agent. "Judge William Hargrove," the agent announced, We have a federal warrant for your arrest on charges of corruption, tampering with evidence, and accepting bribes to influence judicial outcomes. The courtroom erupted. Spectators jumped to their feet. Reporters scrambled to take notes or record on their phones. The prosecutor sat frozen in shock. Alexandra approached the bench. The officers who arrested me 3 days ago didn't bother to check my credentials. Perhaps because they were following orders from someone in this courtroom. She locked eyes with Hargrove. What they didn't know was that I was undercover, investigating a network of corruption at the highest levels of this courthouse. She turned to the gallery. For 6 months, I've been gathering evidence on Judge Hargrove and others who dismissed cases for paying clients and ensured convictions for those who couldn't afford their services. Ironically, my arrest provided the final piece of evidence we needed. Judge Hargrove's face was pale as 2 agents approached. "You can't do this," he whispered. "Do you know who I am?" Alexandra's smile was cold. "Yes, Your Honor, we know exactly who you are. That's the problem." As the agents led the judge away in handcuffs, Alexandra gathered her belongings. The prosecutor found his voice. "Agent Chun, I had no idea." "I know, Mr. Daniels," she replied. "Your name is clear, but I suggest you review all cases presided over by Judge Hargrove in the last 5 years. You'll find some inconsistencies." As she walked to the exit, the courtroom in chaos behind her, Alexandra paused at the door. She turned back, her voice carrying over the commotion. "Next time, think before you judge." With that, she stepped out, leaving behind a courtroom forever changed. As news helicopters circled the courthouse and reporters scrambled to cover the biggest judicial corruption scandal in the state's history, Alexandra Chun quietly slipped into an unmarked car, already preparing her report. Today, justice had been served, but not in the way anyone had expected. If you enjoyed this story about the dangers of underestimating others, subscribe to my channel for more inspiring content. Leave a comment below sharing a time when someone underestimated you. I read every response.